rain fell in a steady, relentless drizzle, soaking the rolling hills of the English countryside and turning the footpaths into soft, slippery ribbons of mud. It was the kind of dreary, gray afternoon that seemed to press down on Oakwood riding, making the old wooden fences sag a little lower. The faded red stable doors creaked a little louder, and the very air hang heavy with the scent of wet earth and horses. Eleanor Vance stood beneath the low eaves of the main barn, watching the water bead on her jacket sleeves, lost in thoughts that had nothing to do with the weather. Bills. Always bills. The center had once been a bustling hub, alive with laughter, the clatter of hooves. Now, business drying up, there had been even gentle whipper of horses. And for a fleeting moment, Eleanor wished she could just disappear into the storm, let the world and its demands pass over her like the rain. Then, from somewhere deep within the barn, a sound cut through her reverie. A low, desperate whinny, followed by the sharp thud of a hoof against a stall wall. Eleanor's heart leapt into her throat. That voice, cracked and familiar, belonged to Willow, a mare so old and gentle that even the smallest disturbance in her routine was cause for concern. Eleanor rushed inside, the cold biting at her ankles, and found Willow lying awkwardly in her straw, sides heaving, eyes rolling white with fear. No, this can't be happening. Eleanor's knees buckled as she fell beside her oldest friend. She stroked Willow's graying neck with shaky fingers, whispering soft, broken reassurances. The mare's entire body shivered, sweat slicking her coat in spite of the chill, and her flanks twitched with every contraction. Eleanor's mind raced. Willow was far past the age for foals. She'd been retired from breeding years ago after a rough birth. No one, not even Dr. Carter, the bright young vet who visited the center every few months, had thought it possible. Yet here she was, unmistakably in labor. Eleanor's panic mounted, pounding in her ears along with the relentless rhythm of rain on the tin roof. She glanced around desperately, her gaze falling on her smartphone, tossed carelessly atop a pile of unpaid invoices. She snatched it up, hands fumbling, and stabbed at the screen until the emergency contact for Dr. Carter appeared. The ring sounded impossibly slow, dragging out the seconds. "Come on, pick up, please." A voice finally answered, calm and clipped, even as chaos unfurled at the other end. Dr. Carter promised to be there in minutes. Eleanor forced herself to breathe, to focus, but the room felt as if it were closing in. She pressed her forehead to Willow's, feeling the old horse's labored breath, and the tears she'd been holding back finally fell, hot and silent. Outside, the storm built, thunder rolling closer, wind rattling the window panes. Each minute dragged on, measured by Willow's ragged breaths and the insistent tick of the clock mounted above the door. Eleanor felt helpless, caught in the web of fate that had ensnared her and her beloved horse. Was it punishment for some past mistake, or just one more trial in a life that seemed composed of them? The sudden screech of tires on gravel yanked her back. Dr. Carter burst in, rain-soaked and brisk, her medical bag slung over one shoulder. The young vet knelt immediately beside Eleanor, eyes taking in the scene with sharp, professional detachment, yet her brow furrowed with worry. Willow's contractions grew stronger, her cries more urgent. Dr. Carter worked with practiced speed, checking the mare's vitals, murmuring instructions to Eleanor, who obeyed without thinking. The air inside the stall was thick with fear and something else, something Eleanor couldn't name but felt settle into her bones. As Dr. Carter prepared her equipment, she shot Eleanor a glance, steady yet grave. "Eleanor, we need to talk. This situation is extremely unusual." Eleanor swallowed hard, searching Dr. Carter's face for hope, but finding only a reflection of her own dread. The old barn seemed to close in around them, every creak and groan amplified by the pounding of the storm outside. The world, for a moment, was reduced to the small, dim-lit stall, 2 women and a horse battling odds no one had thought possible. The minutes stretched on, each one a small eternity. Willow's strength flagged. Dr. Carter's calm words cut through Eleanor's haze, guiding her through each step. Hold her head, talk to her, keep her calm. Eleanor's voice trembled, but she spoke anyway, recounting old stories, memories of the years they'd spent together, hoping that somewhere in Willow's mind, comfort could be found. Suddenly, between one contraction and the next, a sense of stillness descended, an unnatural quiet, broken only by the tap of rain and Willow's faint whicker. For a split second, Eleanor wondered if the worst had happened, if her friend had slipped away without her even realizing. But then Willow surged, one last desperate effort, and Dr. Carter leaned in, hands moving with sure precision. A tiny, slick foal slid into the straw, legs splayed, sides trembling. Eleanor gasped, clutching at Dr. Carter's arm as the vet cleared the foal's airways, coaxed its first shuddering breaths. Willow, exhausted and shaking, turned her head weakly, nuzzling the new arrival. Eleanor sobbed in relief, the tightness in her chest giving way to a fragile hope. As the storm finally began to recede, the light outside fading into dusk, Eleanor cradled Willow's head in her lap and watched the foal struggle to stand. Dr. Carter, muddy and disheveled, leaned against the stall wall, her expression a complex mix of relief and deep concern. "You did good, old girl. You did so good." But even in that small, victorious moment, Eleanor couldn't ignore the gnawing worry in Dr. Carter's eyes, or the way the foal's legs trembled more than they should. Somewhere in the distance, lightning flashed, illuminating the path that lay ahead. A path of questions, secrets, and a storm that was only just beginning. The storm outside had quieted, but the tension inside Oakwood's main office was as thick as ever. The overhead light flickered slightly, casting long shadows over the battered desk where Eleanor now sat, still damp from the barn and clutching a mug of tea that had long since gone cold. Across the room, the soft blue glow from the security monitor painted her tired face in ghostly hues, illuminating lines that had grown deeper over years of worry and responsibility. Willow and her foal, already nicknamed the Little Miracle by Dr. Carter, rested in the straw, their breathing finally even and steady. But Eleanor's nerves refused to settle. She sat hunched over her desk, scrolling through the footage from the barn's outdated CCTV cameras, searching for anything that might explain how an old, retired mare could suddenly be carrying a foal, and by all appearances, by a high-value sire. The storm had left puddles outside the office door, muddy footprints leading all the way to her chair. She barely noticed, too absorbed in the flickering black and white video on her screen. The footage played back in quick flashes. The storm raging outside, the empty paddock, the shifting forms of horses seeking shelter from the rain. And then, movement, a shadow, slipping along the far fence, pausing near Willow's stall. Eleanor frowned, leaning closer. The grainy image showed a figure moving with purpose, almost gliding, as if knowing precisely where to step to avoid the floodlights. For a moment, the person paused just inside the edge of the frame, their features lost in shadow. But it was unmistakably a woman. Her build, her stride, her hesitation before ducking out of sight. That can't be right. Eleanor rubbed her eyes, blinking away exhaustion. Who would sneak onto the property at night, especially in a storm like that? The idea was absurd, but the footage was undeniable. She watched the sequence again, rewinding and replaying it, tracking the stranger's every move. There was a brief glimpse of her face, pale, anxious, framed by a hood. Then she was gone, swallowed by the darkness. Eleanor's mind raced. Could this woman have something to do with Willow's pregnancy? The thought was as wild as the storm had been, but nothing about the past 24 hours felt normal. Eleanor's thoughts drifted to the world outside Oakwood, the world of riding competitions, sponsors, and social media influencers. It was a world she'd always found bewildering, full of image and ambition, where horses were often valued more for their bloodlines than their souls. Her phone buzzed against the desk, jarring her from her thoughts. The screen lit up with a notification, an Instagram post tagged at Oakwood from earlier that summer. Curious, Eleanor opened the app. She scrolled through glossy images, perfectly groomed horses, bright-eyed young riders, and polished arenas a far cry from Oakwood's muddy paddocks. Among them, one post caught her eye. Chloe Turner, the influencer who'd spent a few weeks at Oakwood last season, smiling beside Vanquish, Alistair Finch's prized stallion. The caption read, "Making future champions." Eleanor's breath caught. She returned to the CCTV footage, mind racing. Vanquish was one of the most valuable stallions in the region, insured for hundreds of thousands, his offspring prized and protected. The woman in the video had the same slight build, the same nervous energy Chloe always radiated, half eager for the camera, half eager to impress. No, it can't be. She reached for her phone again, fingers trembling as she opened Chloe's Instagram feed. Dozens of photos scrolled by. Chloe posing in expensive riding gear, her smile calculated and bright, her captions filled with hashtags about dreams and victory. But beneath the surface, Eleanor saw the desperation, the hunger for recognition that defined so many young influencers. She remembered Chloe's last visit, her questions about Vanquish's schedule, her persistence in asking for just one picture with him. Eleanor's gaze shifted to the foal's stall, visible through the office window. The little one lay curled beside Willow, frail but alert, its coat dark and sleek, its markings a near-perfect match for Vanquish. The pieces clicked together with an icy certainty. A sickening dread rose in Eleanor's stomach. This wasn't just an accident. Someone had planned this, exploited Willow in the dead of night, most likely for fame, money, or both. The evidence was there, laid out across a grainy video and a handful of boastful social media posts. As the rain finally stopped, leaving only the distant drip of water from the gutters, Eleanor's doubt gave way to anger. She watched the CCTV footage again, this time noting every step, every hesitation. The woman in the video reached Willow's stall, looking over her shoulder before unlocking the door with what could only be a practiced hand. She slipped inside, out of sight, for several long minutes. Then she emerged, darting back through the darkness, her face caught for a heartbeat by a shaft of light, just enough to make Eleanor certain. Chloe. It had to be her. The question that haunted Eleanor was no longer who, but why. The office felt cold and small. Eleanor rose, pacing the worn carpet, the anger and betrayal roiling in her chest. Oakwood had always been a refuge, Now it felt violated, its trust broken for the sake of some shallow, fleeting ambition. Her thoughts flickered back to the foal, so vulnerable and so innocent, the product of a reckless gamble. She picked up her phone, debating whether to call Alistair Finch, the owner of Vanquish, and technically the stallion's keeper. He was a difficult man, wealthy, proud, and rarely forgiving when it came to breaches of protocol. But Eleanor knew she couldn't keep this to herself. She snapped photos of the CCTV screen, took screenshots of Chloe's incriminating Instagram posts, and saved them all in a new folder titled Evidence. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her, heavier than ever. For Willow, for the Foal, for the reputation of Oakwood, she needed to act. She drafted a message to Dr. Carter, summarizing what she'd discovered, her words clipped and precise despite her shaking hands. As she finished, a single thought echoed in her mind. This isn't just about a foal. It's about trust, about boundaries, about what people are willing to risk, and whom they're willing to hurt, for a shot at the spotlight. A new day was breaking outside, pale light filtering through the clouds. Eleanor stood by the window, watching the mist rise from the fields. She was exhausted, but resolve hardened in her chest. She had always believed in kindness, in honesty, in the dignity of her animals and her work. Now, facing betrayal and uncertainty, she felt something else rising, an old, familiar fire. She would fight. For Willow, for the foal, for Oakwood itself. Eleanor turned away from the window and set to work, determined to uncover the truth, no matter how ugly or complicated it might become. The world outside might be obsessed with appearances and viral moments, but inside this battered, loyal little stable, Eleanor would make sure the truth had its day. The gray light of dawn filtered through the stable windows, revealing a barn that had barely slept. Eleanor moved quietly among the stalls, fatigue etched deep in her bones, but her eyes never strayed far from Willow and her new foal. The night's chaos had given way to a heavy silence, the kind that settled after a storm when the world seemed to be catching its breath. Dr. Carter returned before breakfast, the vet's car rumbling up the gravel drive as if drawn by some sixth sense for trouble. Eleanor was waiting, her expression guarded but grateful, motioning the young woman inside with a tired wave. Together, they entered the stall where Willow lay, her head low but her eyes softer now, the worst pain behind her. The foal, still unnamed, lay pressed close to her side, fragile and uncertain, legs trembling every time he tried to stand. Dr. Carter knelt, her tools already in hand, and began a thorough examination. Eleanor hovered nearby, anxious, searching the vet's face for any sign of reassurance. The silence stretched, broken only by the foal's labored breaths and the rhythmic clinking of Dr. Carter's instruments. "He's a fighter," Dr. Carter finally said, voice low. "But there's something not right with his hindquarters. See how he struggles to keep his balance?" Eleanor nodded, heart sinking. She watched as the foal tottered, his movements jerky and uncoordinated. Each attempt to stand ended in a collapse, straw flying as his spindly legs slid out from beneath him. "It might be wobbler syndrome," Dr. Carter continued, her tone gentle but grave. "It's a neurological disorder, congenital most often. Sometimes it's inherited. It means he may never be strong enough to train, let alone race." The words hit Eleanor like a punch. She stared at the tiny foal, her heart aching. Not just for the life that might have been, but for Willow, who had carried this child against all odds, only to see him born into struggle. "No," Eleanor whispered, her hand reaching for Willow's neck. He has to pull through. After everything. Dr. Carter placed a reassuring hand on Eleanor's shoulder. He's alive. That counts for something. But you should prepare yourself for a long road. He'll need extra care, physical therapy, maybe even surgery down the line. Eleanor blinked back tears, nodding. In that moment, she felt something shift inside. A stubbornness born of years spent patching up battered horses, nursing the lost and unwanted back to health. She wouldn't give up on him, no matter the cost. The foal, as if sensing the attention, gave a weak whinny. Eleanor managed a watery smile. "Phoenix," she said softly, the name coming to her as naturally as breath. "He's Phoenix. He's going to rise from this." Dr. Carter looked up, a small smile breaking through her worry. "Phoenix. I like that. Fitting." Eleanor pressed her forehead to Willow's, feeling the old mare's warm breath, and made a silent vow. Whatever happened, Phoenix would know love. He would know safety, even if the rest of the world saw him as broken. But beneath her resolve, fear gnawed at her. Wobbler syndrome was serious, often fatal. The costs, emotional, financial, and physical, would be enormous. Oakwood could barely stay afloat as it was. The knowledge that this new life had been forced on Willow, that someone had done this out of selfish ambition, made Eleanor's anger burn brighter. Dr. Carter finished her examination and rose, wiping her hands. "I'll put together a care plan. We'll do everything we can. But Eleanor, you should know. This wasn't just bad luck. Phoenix's condition, the timing. Someone arranged for this breeding." Eleanor nodded grimly. "I know who," she said, her voice flat. "And I'm not letting her get away with it." Dr. Carter raised an eyebrow, but didn't press. "I'll check in later. Call me if anything changes." As the vet left, Eleanor sat down in the straw, exhaustion washing over her. Willow nuzzled her gently, as if offering comfort. Phoenix, for his part, managed to stand for a few wobbly seconds before collapsing back against his mother. Eleanor watched him, hope and dread twisting together inside her. The day passed in a blur of chores and quiet resolve. Eleanor stayed near the foal, helping him to his feet, massaging his legs, murmuring encouragement every time he tried and failed. Each attempt was harder than the last, but Phoenix never gave up. There was a fire in him, stubborn and bright, and Eleanor found herself clinging to it. Between tending to Willow and Phoenix, Eleanor pieced together her evidence. She printed out stills from the CCTV, organized Chloe Turner's social media posts, and drafted a letter to Alistair Finch. The task steadied her nerves, giving shape to her anger and her purpose. By late afternoon, the clouds broke and sunlight spilled over Oakwood, illuminating every puddle and blade of grass. The world outside seemed unchanged, blissfully unaware of the drama unfolding within these old, stable walls. Eleanor carried Phoenix out into the paddock, supporting his weight as he took shaky steps in the grass. Willow followed, ever watchful. The sight was almost painfully hopeful. A foal, too frail to run, wobbling under the weight of a legacy he never asked for, but facing the sun all the same. Eleanor's phone chimed with a message. Dr. Carter, checking in, reminding her to record Phoenix's progress. She took a short video, capturing his awkward but determined steps, and sent it back with a simple caption. "He's trying." She posted the same video to Oakwood's neglected Instagram page, not expecting much. The account had a handful of followers, former students, local horse lovers, a few old friends, but within minutes, messages began to appear. "What a fighter. He's beautiful, sending prayers for little Phoenix. Is that Willow's foal? Incredible story." Eleanor blinked in surprise. She scrolled through the comments, realizing that even in his struggle, Phoenix had already begun to touch hearts. His story was raw, unscripted, nothing like the polished perfection that dominated the world of equestrian influencers. That night, as the stars emerged over Oakwood, Eleanor sat in the barn beside Willow and Phoenix. Her anger cooled, but her determination sharper than ever. She remembered the promises she'd made to herself years ago, to always protect her animals, to always choose what was right, even when it was hard. Phoenix was proof that even tragedy could give birth to hope, and as she watched him sleep, his breath slow and steady at last, she knew she would fight for him, no matter the odds. But first, she had a confrontation to prepare for. Tomorrow, Chloe Turner would have to answer for what she'd done. The morning sun crept over the Oakwood Riding Center, chasing away the lingering shadows of the previous day. Dew clung to the grass, sparkling in the light, but the air was thick with anticipation. Something had shifted at Oakwood, and even the horses seemed restless, their ears flicking, hooves shifting anxiously in their stalls. Eleanor stood by the fence of the practice ring, her hands wrapped around a folder stuffed with photos, printouts, and screen grabs. Her evidence. Her heart pounded in her chest, but her face was set, her jaw firm. She was ready. Today, there would be no more secrets. In the middle of the ring, Chloe Turner directed her phone toward herself, her voice bright and rehearsed as she filmed another video for her growing audience. Dressed in spotless white breeches and a designer jacket, she radiated confidence. Her followers adored her, her poise, her charm, the effortless way she seemed to glide through the world of horses and fame. But today, Eleanor watched her with new eyes, seeing through the veneer to the insecurity and ambition beneath. Chloe finished her take, smiled at her reflection in the screen, and only then noticed Eleanor watching from the edge of the ring. She hesitated, a shadow flickering across her face. Eleanor motioned for her to come over. Chloe approached, phone in hand, her stride faltering as she took in Eleanor's grim expression and the bundle of paperwork clutched tight in her arms. "Morning, Eleanor," Chloe said, her voice too bright, too eager. "I was just about to ask if Vanquish could be brought out for a shoot this afternoon." "Chloe," Eleanor interrupted, her tone calm but cold. She held out the folder. "We need to talk." Chloe's eyes narrowed as she took the folder, flipping through the images. Her hands trembled slightly as she recognized the CCTV screenshots, the Instagram posts, the damning connections Eleanor had drawn together. I don't know what you think," Chloe began. But Eleanor cut her off again. "Chloe, last night, Willow nearly died giving birth to a foal she should never have been carrying. She's old, she's retired, and someone who knew exactly what they were doing, let Vanquish into her stall." Eleanor's voice was steady, but her eyes blazed. "You left a trail, Chloe. Not just on camera, but all over the internet." Chloe's mask slipped. The hand holding her phone dropped to her side. For a long moment, she just stared at the ground, her face white as chalk. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling, no trace of influencer polish left. "I needed that foal, Eleanor. You don't understand," she whispered, voice cracking. "All I ever wanted was a shot, a real shot at making it. Vanquish's bloodline, it's gold. If I could get a foal by him, I could win the Future Star Award. That's how you get sponsored. That's how you get noticed." Eleanor didn't flinch. "So you risked Willow's life? For a trophy? For likes and follows?" Chloe's lips quivered. "It's not just that. There's so much pressure. You have no idea what it's like, the world I'm in. Everyone's counting followers, watching your every move, waiting for you to slip up. You're nothing if you're not on top, if you're not going viral. The sponsorships, the contracts, they're everything. If you fall behind, it's over. And I was slipping. Her voice faltered, tears welling in her eyes, but she pressed on, almost pleading. I told myself Willow would be fine. She's always been healthy. I just needed one chance to prove myself. If I won the Future Star, Equi-Style UK would have to notice me. I could pay back my debts, keep competing, everything would change. Eleanor's anger simmered, but beneath it was a deep, familiar sadness. She'd seen so many young riders come through Oakwood, all burning with hope, desperate for recognition. But ambition twisted by desperation could destroy as much as it built. Did you ever think about what would happen if something went wrong? Eleanor asked quietly. If Willow died? If the foal wasn't healthy? Chloe wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I thought I could control it. I thought, if I planned everything right. Eleanor shook her head, her voice turning hard. You didn't just gamble with your career, Chloe. You gambled with lives. Willow and her foal are living with the consequences of your choices. A heavy silence fell. For the first time since Eleanor had known her, Chloe looked truly lost. From behind them, the sharp sound of boots on gravel signaled a new arrival. Alistair Finch, owner of Vanquish, strode across the yard, his face unreadable, suit immaculate even in the dusty morning. He'd received Eleanor's message. Now he paused beside the fence, eyes cold as steel as he surveyed the two women before him. Eleanor, Chloe, Alistair greeted, nodding stiffly. I understand there's been an incident. Eleanor handed him the folder. Alistair paged through the evidence, his expression darkening with each new photo. When he looked up, his gaze fixed on Chloe. Miss Turner, he said, his voice cutting, do you realize what you've done? Not only have you violated my property and my trust, you have endangered the reputation and future of Oakwood. Vanquish's bloodline is not yours to exploit. Willow could have died. If word of this gets out, he shook his head, fury barely restrained. Chloe's shoulders slumped. Her phone slipped from her hand, landing in the dirt with a soft thud. The power of her online world meant nothing in this moment. I'm sorry, she whispered. I just wanted, just once, to be special. Alistair's face showed no pity. Your contract here is over. Pack your things. You'll leave Oakwood by the end of the day. Chloe blinked, tears spilling down her cheeks. Her dreams, her carefully constructed online identity, her future, all gone in an instant. She turned away, shoulders shaking, leaving her phone abandoned on the ground. For a moment, Eleanor felt the urge to reach out, to offer some comfort. But the memory of Willow's agonized whinnies and Phoenix's trembling legs held her back. Alistair turned to Eleanor, his tone softening slightly. Thank you for telling me. I'll speak to my insurance, and I'll make sure the right people know the truth. Eleanor nodded, feeling the weight of the morning settle over her. She glanced toward the barn, where Phoenix stood on unsteady legs, watched over by his weary mother. There was still so much work to do, so much healing to begin. Chloe paused at the edge of the yard, glancing back only once. Her face was streaked with tears, but there was a flash of something else. Anger, shame, or maybe just the sharp pain of dreams destroyed by their own reckless pursuit. Eleanor watched her go, sadness warring with relief. Oakwood had survived another storm, But the scars, on horses and humans alike, would take a long time to fade. She turned back to Alistair, her resolve firm. Phoenix will need treatment, and Willow deserves the best care we can give her. I'll send you the bills. Alistair nodded, his manner all business once again. Of course. Do what you must. As he strode away, Eleanor lingered, letting the stillness settle. She looked at the evidence in her hands, then at the barn where a fragile new life struggled to stand. Chloe's confession echoed in her mind, a harsh lesson in the price of ambition unmoored from compassion. She knew one thing for certain. From this day forward, Oakwood would be a place of second chances. For Willow, for Phoenix, and maybe one day even for Chloe. The news of Chloe's expulsion spread through Oakwood like wildfire. By noon, the regulars at the stables whispered her name in the tack room, their voices low, each person piecing together bits of overheard conversation. Some felt sympathy. A few remembered their own youthful mistakes, but most were angry, shaking their heads as they filled buckets or brushed horses, the betrayal too fresh and raw. Eleanor tried to block out the noise. She had more important matters to handle. After the confrontation, she retreated to Willow's stall. The old mare stood quietly, her eyes tired but calm. Phoenix lay nearby, tiny chest rising and falling, legs tucked beneath his fragile body. Dr. Carter had left her a list of instructions, therapy stretches, feeding notes, a schedule for medication. Eleanor followed them with religious precision, her hands gentle and sure. Still, the words Chloe had uttered that morning haunted her. "You have no idea what it's like, the world I'm in," Eleanor wondered. Was the real culprit Chloe's reckless ambition, or the relentless culture that turned horse shows into beauty pageants and social media into a battlefield? She'd seen young riders change over the years, their goals shifting from blue ribbons to brand deals, from learning horsemanship to learning how to be seen. Mid-afternoon brought another visitor. Alistair Finch returned, his usually confident stride replaced by a measured, almost wary approach. He waited by the stable door, watching Eleanor finish a round of gentle stretching exercises with Phoenix. "How is he?" Alistair asked, his tone more subdued than usual. Eleanor straightened, brushing straw from her jeans. "Struggling, but holding on. Willow, too. Dr. Carter's doing everything she can. Phoenix will need physical therapy and a lot of luck, but he's got spirit." Alistair's gaze drifted to the foal, who lifted his head and stared back with wide, uncertain eyes. "My lawyers want to keep this quiet. There could be insurance complications if word gets out about unauthorized breeding." He hesitated, "But I'll cover the vet bills, as promised." Eleanor nodded. "It's not just about the money, Alistair. Chloe may be gone, but this—" She gestured to Willow and Phoenix. "This will follow her forever. The internet forgets, but we won't." Alistair's face hardened. "She damaged Vanquish's reputation and my own, but—" He paused, voice dropping lower. "We all chased something, Eleanor. I wanted a champion. She wanted to be one. Sometimes wanting isn't enough." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a group of young riders. They clustered near the barn entrance, their faces anxious. One girl stepped forward, voice trembling. "Miss Vance, is it true? Is Chloe leaving for good?" Eleanor nodded, her answer gentle but direct. "She broke the rules and put our horses at risk. We can't allow that." The group murmured among themselves. One boy, bolder than the rest, spoke up. "But she was our best shot at getting Oakwood noticed again. All those followers—" Eleanor's eyes softened. she understood. Oakwood's faded glory, the struggle to survive, the longing for a return to the center's heyday. These hopes now rested on the thin shoulders of kids who'd grown up online. Chloe was talented, Eleanor replied. But talent doesn't excuse carelessness. True champions put the horse first, always. The riders drifted away, chastened. Alistair lingered a moment longer, his jaw clenched. "What will you do now?" he asked. Eleanor glanced at Phoenix. The foal wobbled to his feet, took a few unsteady steps, then collapsed again. "We rebuild," she said quietly, "the right way, with integrity." Later that day, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, Eleanor sat at her desk, pen in hand. She wrote a long post for the Oakwood blog, her first in years. She told the story of Willow and Phoenix, the storm, the birth, the uncertainty. She did not mention names or assign blame. Instead, she focused on resilience, the lesson the horses taught her every day. She hesitated before hitting publish, but as she reread her words, she saw not just her own pain, but the story of so many animals and people facing unfair odds. The post went live. At first, only a handful of locals liked and shared it, but overnight, something changed. A small online community of equestrians, therapy horse advocates, and even a few veterinarians found the post. They left comments. "I cried reading this. Thank you for your honesty. Phoenix is a fighter, sending love from Yorkshire. Thank you for reminding us what really matters in horsemanship." Eleanor read each comment with a lump in her throat. For the first time in a long while, she felt Oakwood wasn't alone. The next morning, Phoenix struggled to his feet, and to Eleanor's amazement, managed 3 shaky steps before sitting down. Willow nickered, nudging him gently, her love as plain as the dawn. The young riders, having read Eleanor's post, began to gather after school. They watched quietly as she worked with Phoenix, asking questions, volunteering to help. Instead of practicing for ribbons, they found meaning in small victories. A foal's first independent steps, a mare's patient care, a day spent giving instead of taking. Alistair stopped by again, this time carrying a checkbook. "I've been thinking," he said, glancing at the paddock where Phoenix dozed in the sun. "Maybe Oakwood's next champion isn't a horse that wins blue ribbons. Maybe it's the horse that brings everyone together." He handed Eleanor a check, enough to cover several months of feed and therapy. "It's not charity, it's an investment in what matters." Eleanor smiled, exhaustion and hope mingling in her eyes. "Thank you, Alistair." He nodded, turning to leave. "Keep me posted on Phoenix. And Eleanor, if you need anything, you call." As the week went on, Eleanor began to sense a shift at Oakwood. The air seemed lighter, the barn more alive. There was no talk of sponsorships or viral fame, only stories of horses and the people who loved them. Phoenix's story had become a rallying point, not just for Oakwood, but for everyone who read about him. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of orange and gold, Eleanor stood by the paddock fence. Willow grazed peacefully. Phoenix, no longer just the foal who shouldn't have been, trotted awkwardly beside her, each step a small triumph. Eleanor breathed in the cool air and felt, for the first time in ages, that Oakwood might survive. Not because of fame, but because of community. Not because of blue ribbons, but because of hope. She turned back toward the barn, her heart full. There was work ahead, hard, endless work. But she would face it with the quiet courage that had always defined Oakwood. The storm had passed. What remained was the slow, patient rebuilding, One step, one breath, one day at a time. The weeks after Chloe's departure marked the beginning of a quiet transformation at Oakwood. Life did not return to what it had been. Too much had changed. But the old routines found new rhythms, stitched together by hope and the gentle persistence that Eleanor wove into every corner of the farm. Phoenix's struggle became the center of that new rhythm. Every morning before sunrise, Eleanor was in the barn, wrapping her hands around the foal's slender legs, coaxing them through a series of careful stretches prescribed by Dr. Carter. The old vet came by often now, sometimes just to observe, sometimes to offer new exercises, her faith in Phoenix's determination growing with each visit. The early days were filled with setbacks. Phoenix would stumble, collapse, or refuse to try at all, and each failure was a sharp reminder of how fragile he was. Yet Eleanor refused to let frustration touch her voice, meeting each of his failures with quiet encouragement. "It's all right, little one," she murmured each time he slipped, brushing the sawdust from his dark coat. "You're stronger than you know." What surprised Eleanor most was how quickly Phoenix's struggle drew others in. At first, it was just the handful of students who lingered after lessons, volunteering to hold the foal steady or fetch bandages. But after Eleanor's heartfelt blog post, a ripple of support traveled far beyond Oakwood. Old friends, local horse lovers, and even strangers from distant counties sent messages of encouragement, donations for Phoenix's care, and stories of their own horses who'd battled the odds. One day, a small package arrived, a handmade halter embroidered with the name Phoenix. Tucked inside was a note, "For your fighter. May he rise again and again." Eleanor smiled, holding the halter to her heart before slipping it over Phoenix's head. The foal's ears flicked, and he nuzzled her hand, as if recognizing the weight of hope she was offering. With the encouragement of this growing community, Eleanor decided to document Phoenix's journey more intentionally. She set up an old camera in the barn and began recording short, honest videos. Phoenix's first time standing for more than a minute, his tentative steps into the paddock, Willow's gentle nudges as he wobbled after her. The videos weren't polished. Her voice sometimes cracked with fatigue. The barn was never quite tidy, and Phoenix's progress was often heartbreakingly slow. But the authenticity resonated. Each clip Eleanor uploaded to the Oakwood blog and Instagram gathered new followers, and soon, a small but dedicated online community formed around Phoenix's recovery. It wasn't just about the foal anymore. People sent in messages about their own challenges, recovery from illness, battles with anxiety, the slow process of rebuilding after loss. Eleanor read every comment, finding strength in the shared resilience, the reminder that struggle was universal, but never truly solitary. She didn't expect the impact Phoenix's journey would have on the students either. The young riders who once obsessed over flawless routines and picture-perfect jumps now asked to help with Phoenix's therapy. They came early and stayed late, learning to measure success not by blue ribbons, but by the determined flick of a foal's ear or the joy of watching him stand, trembling but unbowed. "Can I try?" a shy boy named Jamie asked one afternoon, his hands tucked behind his back as he watched Eleanor support Phoenix through another shaky lap of the paddock. "Of course," Eleanor replied, stepping aside so Jamie could steady the foal's chest, guiding him with gentle, patient words. Phoenix took 3 steps, paused, then tried for a 4th. Jamie's face lit up with pride. "You did it, Phoenix," Jamie whispered, beaming. Eleanor found herself teaching lessons that had little to do with riding and everything to do with patience, compassion, and grit. The barn became a sanctuary for small acts of kindness, A student quietly mucking an extra stall, another leaving treats for Willow, a mother baking muffins for Eleanor after a long day. Where once Oakwood had been defined by competition, it was now defined by care. The change was not lost on Alistair Finch. He continued to visit, each time less as a stern businessman and more as a quiet supporter. One afternoon, he arrived as Eleanor was filming a short update about Phoenix's progress. "Mind if I watch?" he asked. Eleanor glanced up, seeing the vulnerability in his eyes. "You're welcome here, Alistair. Always." They stood together, watching as Phoenix navigated a set of makeshift poles Eleanor had set out as part of his therapy. The foal wobbled but did not fall, his determination inspiring a silent awe. Alistair broke the quiet. "You know, I spent my life measuring worth in winnings and pedigrees. I thought Vanquish was my legacy. But watching you and Phoenix, I think I've missed the point." Eleanor smiled. "Legacies are built one day at a time. Sometimes they look nothing like what we expect." Alistair reached into his coat and produced an envelope. "I want you to have this. It's not a donation. It's an investment. In Oakwood, in Phoenix, and in the kind of legacy that matters." Inside was a check, enough to cover a new set of therapy equipment, repairs to the old barn, and several months' worth of feed. Eleanor felt tears prick at her eyes. She squeezed his hand, words failing her for a moment. "It means everything, Alistair, truly." He nodded, voice thick. "Just promise you'll keep telling Phoenix's story." "I will," Eleanor promised. "He's given us all something to believe in." With new resources, Eleanor organized a community day at Oakwood, inviting supporters, local and online, to visit the stables, meet Phoenix, and learn about the real work of horse care. The day arrived with clear skies and a soft breeze. Children ran through the paddocks, their laughter mingling with the nickers of the horses. Phoenix, wearing his embroidered halter, was the star of the day. Each tentative step celebrated. Each nuzzle from Willow met with applause. Eleanor took a moment to stand back and watch, her heart swelling with pride and gratitude. She saw Alistair chatting with a group of students, Dr. Carter demonstrating therapy stretches, and a circle of parents sharing coffee and stories. For the first time in years, Oakwood buzzed with the energy of a true community. As dusk settled, Eleanor led Phoenix and Willow back to the barn. She paused, looking out over the field, the sky painted in pink and lavender hues. "We did it, little one," she whispered, stroking Phoenix's neck. "Not just you and me, all of us." Phoenix pressed against her, strong and steady for a moment, before settling in beside Willow. Eleanor watched him breathe, her hope no longer fragile, but steady and sure. Oakwood was not just surviving, it was becoming something new. And at the center, a foal who should not have been. Rising again and again, teaching everyone the real meaning of resilience. A gentle mist hung over Oakwood on the morning after the community day, softening the outlines of paddocks and fences. The fields sparkled with dew as the early sun crept across the landscape, turning everything to silver and gold. For Eleanor, who had risen before dawn, the quiet felt sacred, an earned peace after weeks of turmoil. She moved slowly through the barn, her steps measured, her heart full but restless. The echoes of yesterday's laughter and conversation lingered in her mind, yet the old anxieties weren't so easily silenced. Bills still needed paying, repairs still loomed, and Phoenix's future remained uncertain. But the warmth of community support, its unexpected, humbling strength, reminded her she was no longer fighting alone. She found Phoenix and Willow in their favorite paddock, the foal standing unsteadily but tall, nosing at the fresh grass while Willow watched with the endless patience of a mother. Eleanor leaned against the fence and let herself breathe for the first time in what felt like years. She didn't notice Alistair Finch approaching until his shadow fell across the grass beside her. He wore no suit today, just jeans, boots, and a well-worn barn coat. His manner, too, was changed. Less the man of business, more the man seeking something real. "Morning, Eleanor," Alistair said, voice quiet. He rested his arms on the top rail beside her, both of them watching Phoenix for a while before speaking further. "Morning, Alistair. You're up early." He smiled faintly. "Old habits? Couldn't sleep. Too many thoughts." They stood together in comfortable silence. At last, Alistair spoke again, his tone softer than Eleanor had ever heard. "Yesterday, that was something," he said, his eyes following Phoenix's awkward but determined movements. "You made it more than a fundraiser. You made it matter." Eleanor shook her head. "It wasn't just me. People needed something to believe in. Phoenix gave them that. Maybe he gave you and me that too." Alistair nodded, his gaze turning distant. "I've spent so much time chasing trophies, wanting to be the man behind the champion. Sometimes I wonder what I've actually built. This," he gestured at Oakwood, at Phoenix. "This feels different, real." Eleanor studied him for a moment, then offered the kind of truth that comes only after loss and hard-won acceptance. "I used to think my value was measured in what Oakwood accomplished. How many ribbons? How many champions? How many students made it to the big shows? But none of that lasted. What does last is the respect between people, the care, the way we help each other find our footing again, even when we stumble." Alistair looked at her, the old hardness gone from his eyes. "I want to help, not just with money. I want to build something better. For Phoenix, for the kids, for the community. Maybe for myself, too." Eleanor smiled, a weight lifting from her shoulders. "We could use your help, Alistair, and your heart." He flushed, unexpectedly vulnerable. "What would you have me do?" She thought for a moment, then answered, "Come walk with me. There's a lot I want to show you." They toured the farm together, talking quietly about Oakwood's history and the dreams Eleanor still carried. She spoke of her vision, therapy programs for children, lessons focused not on winning but on empathy, outreach to those who'd been pushed out of other, more ruthless stables. Alistair listened, sometimes asking questions, sometimes just taking it all in. By the time they circled back to the barn, the plan for a partnership, unspoken for years, had started to take root. As the day wore on, Alistair surprised Eleanor by rolling up his sleeves to help with chores. He mucked out stalls with Jamie, laughing at the boys' barnyard jokes, and let the youngest students pet Vanquish, who had returned to Oakwood's care under strict supervision. For the first time, Eleanor saw him not as a competitor, but as a man trying awkwardly but earnestly to make amends. That afternoon, Dr. Carter stopped by to check on Phoenix's progress. She found Eleanor, Alistair, and several students gathered in the therapy ring, encouraging Phoenix as he attempted a new set of balance exercises. Phoenix struggled, his back legs trembling, but the crowd cheered him on with gentle voices. "Come on, Phoenix, you got this." With each step, Phoenix's resolve grew. He tottered, paused, then took another. Willow watched, pride shining in her tired eyes. Dr. Carter joined Eleanor by the rail. "He's a miracle, you know. I've never seen a foal fight so hard, or a community rally so fiercely." Eleanor smiled, her heart swelling with pride and gratitude. "He's teaching us all something, isn't he?" The vet nodded. "Not just about horses, about not giving up, about lifting each other when we can't stand on our own." After Phoenix's therapy, Eleanor gathered everyone by the main barn. The group, students, parents, volunteers, even Alistair, circled up as she cleared her throat, suddenly shy. "I want to thank you all," she began, "for believing in Oakwood when it felt like nobody else did, for helping Phoenix, and for reminding me what this place can be." She met Alistair's gaze, and he nodded for her to continue. "With Alistair's help, and with all of you, I want to expand our mission. Not just riding lessons, but real horsemanship. Therapy for kids who need it. A place where everyone is welcome, not just the best or the richest." The applause was small at first, then built as each person realized that they were being invited to help shape Oakwood's future. Jamie grinned, his friends cheered, and a few parents dabbed their eyes. Alistair stepped forward. "Eleanor's right. I haven't always done things for the right reasons, but I see now what's possible. I'll be investing in Oakwood, new equipment, scholarships, repairs. But more importantly, I'm investing in all of you. We build this together." The commitment sent a ripple through the group. For some, it was relief. No more fear that the stables would close. For others, it was inspiration, a second chance to belong. The rest of the day passed in a glow of newfound hope. Eleanor and Alistair finalized plans for Oakwood's expansion. Students brainstormed ways to get more kids involved, offering volunteer days, outreach to local schools, partnerships with charities. Even Dr. Carter agreed to offer free clinics, teaching basic horse care and animal first aid. As the sun set, Eleanor and Alistair stood by the paddock, watching Phoenix nap in the evening light. Willow grazed nearby, her shadow long on the grass. "Do you ever regret any of it?" Alistair asked quietly. Eleanor shook her head. "Not anymore. Everything led to this. Even the heartbreak, even the loss. Sometimes you have to lose your way to find what matters most." They stood together in silence as night settled on Oakwood. Their partnership sealed not with words, but with the simple, enduring respect born from adversity shared and overcome. Oakwood had changed. Its future was no longer measured by ribbons or money, but by the lives it touched, and by a single, fragile foal who, against all odds, had taught an entire community the meaning of hope. The morning of Oakwood's first true community day dawned bright and clear. The kind of perfect English summer morning that made the fields shimmer green and gold. Eleanor rose before sunrise, her heart fluttering with a nervous excitement she hadn't felt in years. She moved through the barn in a purposeful flurry, her mind juggling a dozen tasks, last-minute preparations, calls to volunteers, a final check on Phoenix and Willow. Outside, the paddocks had been freshly mowed, the old wooden tables scrubbed, and rows of colorful banners hung from every fence and stable door. Balloons bobbed in the gentle breeze. For the first time in what felt like forever, Oakwood looked not tired, but alive, filled with possibility and joy. By mid-morning, families began to arrive. Cars filled the gravel lot. Children in wellies and sun hats spilled out, wide-eyed and eager. Old students returned, some with their own children in tow. Volunteers bustled about, handing out homemade lemonade and guiding newcomers to the activities. Even the horses seemed to sense the difference, poking their heads over stall doors and nickering at the unfamiliar energy. Phoenix, wearing his embroidered halter, stood in a special paddock near the center of the action, surrounded by ribbons of soft rope and shaded by a makeshift tent. Willow stayed close by, never far from her foal. The two had become Oakwood's living miracle, symbols of resilience, hope, and the promise that even tragedy could give birth to new beginnings. Eleanor drifted through the crowd, her nerves easing with every smile and handshake. She watched as children lined up to brush and feed the ponies, their laughter carrying on the summer breeze. Jamie and the other young riders organized a mini-show for the younger kids, letting them lead gentle old ponies around a small ring, each child beaming with pride at their colorful participation ribbons. Inside the barn, Dr. Carter set up a demonstration on horse care and therapy. Parents and children gathered, listening as she explained how Phoenix's exercises helped him grow stronger. She even let a few kids try the simple stretches on Phoenix, under close supervision, earning giggles and shy, grateful smiles. At one table, parents organized a bake sale, proceeds marked for Oakwood's therapy fund. Another group set up an arts and crafts station, where children painted horseshoes with bright colors and encouraging words. The entire farm buzzed with the energy of a real celebration, not just of horses, but of community, belonging, and the chance to help something precious grow. Eleanor was everywhere at once, answering questions, offering encouragement, and sharing the story of Willow and Phoenix. When one little girl in a wheelchair hesitated near Phoenix's paddock, Eleanor knelt beside her. "Would you like to meet him?" Eleanor asked gently. The girl nodded, wide-eyed. Her mother hovered nearby, grateful and nervous. Eleanor led the girl up to the rope, where Phoenix stood patiently, Willow watching protectively. The girl reached out, her small hand trembling, and Phoenix stretched his neck to nuzzle her fingers. The connection was instant, a spark that lit both their faces. Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes. She looked up and saw others watching, some wiping away tears of their own. For that moment, the world seemed to pause, every heart beating in unison with the wonder and simple kindness of the scene. Alistair Finch, who'd spent the morning greeting guests and quietly supporting the volunteers, approached Eleanor at the edge of the crowd. He wore his usual reserve, but his eyes shone with pride. "You've done something remarkable here, Eleanor," he said. "This is what Oakwood should always have been. A home, not just a stable, a place for everyone." Eleanor smiled, gratitude welling up. "I couldn't have done it alone, Alistair. Not without your help, or the help of everyone here. Phoenix brought us together." He nodded, thoughtful. There's something about a second chance that brings out the best in people. Maybe in horses, too. The day unfolded in a series of small, perfect moments. Children learning to ride, families picnicking under the trees, old friends reconnecting after years apart. Local musicians played folk songs from a makeshift stage. Someone organized a raffle with donated prizes from local businesses. And by afternoon, the barn was filled with laughter and the scent of fresh-baked bread. Midway through the festivities, Eleanor gathered the crowd near Phoenix's paddock. She stood on a small platform, her hands trembling slightly as she called for attention. "Thank you all for coming today," she began, her voice carrying across the fields. "Oakwood has been through a lot. But what I've learned is that healing isn't something we do alone. It's something we do together. Willow and Phoenix are proof that hope survives even in the hardest times, and that every life, no matter how fragile, has the power to change us." She paused, glancing at the little girl still petting Phoenix, at Jamie and his friends, at Alistair and Dr. Carter. "We're starting something new here. With your support, Oakwood will become a place for therapy, for learning, for community. For anyone who needs a second chance. If you want to be part of that, we welcome you. The applause was thunderous. For a moment, Eleanor had to close her eyes, overwhelmed by the love that poured from the people gathered around her. When she opened them, she saw that the little girl had begun to cry, not out of sadness, but because, as her mother explained, she's never touched a horse before. She never thought she'd be brave enough. As the afternoon faded into evening, the celebration continued. Donations poured in, enough to fund Phoenix's therapy for months. New volunteers signed up, offering their time and skills. Parents asked about lessons, and a local school principal discussed bringing students for animal-assisted learning. The seeds of something lasting were planted that day, taking root in the fertile soil of Oakwood's battered past. When the last cars pulled away and dusk settled over the fields, Eleanor stood at the edge of the paddock, exhausted but lighter than she'd felt in years. Willow dozed in the long grass, Phoenix curled up at her side, safe and content. The little girl's painted horseshoe, bright pink with the word hope, hung from the fence. Alistair joined Eleanor in the twilight, both of them silent for a while. You know, I used to think the best horses were the ones that brought glory, he said. Now I think the best ones are the ones that bring people together. Eleanor nodded, the truth of it settling in her heart. Sometimes it takes a broken thing to show us how strong we can be. Oakwood was no longer just a place of struggle. It had become a home again, a sanctuary for hope, healing, and the endless possibility of new beginnings. And at the heart of it all, a once unwanted foal who had taught an entire community the meaning of resilience. As the stars appeared overhead, Eleanor whispered into the dusk, "Thank you, Phoenix, for giving us back our faith." And for the first time in a long time, she knew Oakwood would endure. A golden sunrise spilled across the fields of Oakwood, filling every dip and hollow with a gentle light. It was a morning thick with memory. Eleanor stood in the quiet paddock beside Willow and Phoenix, her hand resting on the mare's withers as she watched the foal sleep. The farm was silent but alive, a hush before the stirrings of another busy day. Eleanor's thoughts drifted backward, unspooling like old film. The chaos of that stormy night came rushing back. Willow's cries, the frantic call to Dr. Carter, the impossible birth. She remembered the fear and the hope that mingled as Phoenix, trembling and fragile, took his first uncertain breaths. Each memory felt sharper now, edged with understanding. Every moment since, the pain, the setbacks, the healing, had pointed her here, to this day, this stillness, this purpose. It was a morning for reflection. Eleanor knelt in the grass, feeling the damp earth against her knees. She looked at Phoenix, now so much stronger, legs no longer shaking with every step, and understood that the foal's journey was more than a string of small victories. It was a testament to everything she had almost lost, and everything she had reclaimed. A familiar car pulled into the gravel drive. Alistair Finch stepped out, carrying a briefcase and a determined expression. He nodded to Eleanor as he approached, and she smiled in return. "Morning, Eleanor. Lovely day," Alistair said, glancing at the grazing horses. "It is," she replied. "Good day for something new." They walked together toward the farmhouse, where Dr. Carter was waiting at the kitchen table, a stack of papers before her. With them was a third guest, Ms. Rowena Porter, the director of a local children's charity. She smiled warmly, her eyes soft but sharp, a woman who had seen more than her share of both hardship and hope. They settled at the table, the sunlight warming the wooden surface. Eleanor poured coffee. her movements calm but purposeful. The time for planning had come, Alistair began, his tone all business, but underpinned with a quiet pride. We've spoken with our insurance, and all the legal details have been handled. With Oakwood's new support, and with the community behind us, we're ready to take the next step. Ms. Porter nodded, spreading out a colorful brochure. The children in our programs, many of them have physical or emotional challenges. We've seen amazing results from animal-assisted therapy, but there's nothing quite like the bond between a child and a horse. What you've built here, Eleanor, could change lives. Dr. Carter added, Phoenix's story is already inspiring people. If we formalize a therapy program with structured sessions and professional oversight, we can make Oakwood a sanctuary, not just for horses, but for kids who need healing too. Eleanor listened, her heart thumping. She looked at the logo Rowena had sketched, a fiery orange foal rising above stylized hands. Phoenix Project, healing hearts, one hoofbeat at a time. The words gave Eleanor goosebumps. She traced the image with her finger, thinking of all the pain and joy that had led here. She cleared her throat. I want this, all of it. For Phoenix, for Willow, for Oakwood, for every child who needs a place to feel strong again. Alistair opened his briefcase, drawing out a partnership agreement. We're all in. We'll fund the renovations, hire additional staff, and sponsor the first year. Rowena's organization will refer families. Dr. Carter will be the lead veterinary consultant. Eleanor signed her name with a steady hand, then passed the pen to Alistair, Rowena, and Dr. Carter. The moment felt monumental, as if some invisible circle of pain had finally closed and become something whole. After the paperwork was done, they walked out to the paddock to see Phoenix. Rowena carried a basket filled with brushes, carrots, and a soft toy for the foal. She knelt beside the fence as Phoenix came over, nosing at her hand. He's remarkable, Rowena whispered. He looks at you and you just believe. Eleanor smiled. He's taught me more than I ever thought possible. That afternoon, the first group of children from Rowena's charity arrived in a bright yellow minibus. Some used wheelchairs or crutches. Others clung shyly to parents' hands. There was a hush as they rolled through the gate, their eyes wide, hearts wary. Eleanor knelt to greet each child. Welcome to Oakwood. I want you to meet someone special. She led them to Phoenix's paddock. The foal, still small but sturdy now, greeted the children with gentle curiosity. The little girl from Community Day, Sophie, returned, her painted horseshoe now hanging proudly on the fence. She was the first to reach out, running her fingers through Phoenix's dark mane. And soon, others followed. Dr. Carter guided the children through simple therapy activities, brushing Phoenix, offering treats, gently leading him across the soft grass. Willow watched calmly, allowing the children to stroke her nose and feed her slices of apple. The atmosphere shifted. Laughter and shouts filled the air. The children relaxed, eyes shining as they bonded with the horses. Parents took photos, some weeping quietly as they saw their children smile and move in ways they hadn't in months. Eleanor and Alistair watched from a distance, moved beyond words. Rowena stood beside them, her voice thick with emotion. This is what hope looks like. Thank you. Eleanor shook her head, eyes glistening. Don't thank me. Thank Phoenix. He's the heart of this place now. By late afternoon, the children had built a small obstacle course for Phoenix. He trotted carefully, guided by their laughter and cheers, his every step a lesson in patience and courage. Sophie clapped her hands, and for the first time in her life, She ran beside a horse, her limp forgotten, her face radiant. As the sun began to set, Eleanor called everyone together. She spoke softly, but every person listened. Phoenix wasn't born to race or to win trophies. He was born to heal. He turned heartbreak into hope. That's the gift he's given Oakwood, and it's the gift we'll share with others. No matter how hard life gets, there's always a way to rise again. They ended the day by hanging a new sign at the barn gate. Phoenix Project, free equine therapy for children. The children traced their hands on a banner, leaving a rainbow of prints beside Phoenix's hoofmark. As dusk fell, Eleanor stood alone at the paddock, watching Willow and Phoenix graze together. The farm felt peaceful, healed. The ache of old wounds faded, replaced by something new and fierce. Purpose. Eleanor whispered into the twilight. You saved us, little one. Now we'll save others. Above her, the first stars appeared, shining quietly over Oakwood, a sign perhaps that out of tragedy, something beautiful could always be born. Summer deepened over Oakwood, the days stretching long and golden, the nights warm and gentle. By now, the story of Willow and Phoenix had spread far beyond the village. Letters and donations came in from across the country, sometimes from people who had never even seen a horse in real life, but who felt touched by the journey of a foal who'd survived against all odds and a community that had rediscovered its heart. Phoenix grew stronger with each passing day. The limp that had once seemed so permanent faded little by little, until he could keep pace with Willow across the sunlit paddock, his steps less uncertain, his spirit undiminished. The children of the Phoenix Project returned week after week, their faces brightening as they learned new skills, not just how to care for a horse, but how to trust, to be patient, and to believe in small miracles. Eleanor had grown used to the sound of laughter echoing off the stable walls. She watched as Jamie and Sophie and the other children brushed Phoenix's coat, giggling when he nudged their pockets for treats. The barn, once filled with whispers of worry, now thrummed with the joyful chaos of kids, volunteers, and old friends who'd found a reason to come back. It wasn't just a stable, it was a sanctuary. Alistair Finch visited often, his presence more humble each time. He took up small chores, mended fences, and sometimes sat with the children, sharing quiet stories about Vanquish or showing them how to care for Tack. Eleanor found herself smiling at his transformation. There was no sign of the old, proud man who had once measured everything by value and victory. Now he measured by laughter and the bonds he saw forming all around him. On the anniversary of Phoenix's birth, Oakwood hosted a celebration. Invitations went out across the community and beyond, drawing old students, therapy families, volunteers, and neighbors who'd followed the journey online. The yard filled with food and music and handmade banners, each one scrawled with the names of every child who'd brushed a horse or learned to lead one with gentle hands. As the afternoon sun slanted across the fields, Eleanor gathered everyone in the main paddock. Willow and Phoenix stood at her side, their coats shining, both as calm as if they knew they were the center of this happy universe. She took a deep breath and spoke, not with the trembling uncertainty of months ago, but with the quiet strength of someone who'd rebuilt her life piece by piece. I want to thank every one of you. This year has been a story of challenges, heartbreak, and, more than anything, hope. Willow and Phoenix showed us all what it means to keep fighting, even when things seem impossible. But the truth is, Oakwood's real strength comes from you, from everyone who reached out, who showed up, who believed in something bigger than themselves. She paused, looking at the faces around her. Alistair, Dr. Carter, Jamie, Sophie, Rowena Porter, and so many others who had become family. We started the Phoenix Project because we wanted to heal our horses, our kids, ourselves, and look what's happened. We've watched children take their first steps beside a horse, seen families find peace and laughter, and built a home that welcomes everyone, scars and all. Her voice softened, growing more personal. Sometimes our scars are what make us beautiful. Phoenix will never be a champion racer, but he's become a champion of something more important: courage, kindness, and the second chances we all deserve. The crowd cheered, applause swelling as Phoenix nudged Eleanor's shoulder, drawing laughter from the children. Dr. Carter wiped her eyes. Alistair, standing quietly behind the group, simply smiled. Afterward, parents approached Eleanor to share their own stories, of fear, of loss, of the small joys they'd found at Oakwood. Some children shyly presented drawings of Phoenix, or poems about hope. Even the volunteers, many of whom had arrived as strangers, lingered in the yard well into the evening, reluctant to leave the warmth they'd found. As dusk painted the sky in lavender and gold, Jamie led Phoenix to the therapy ring one last time that day. Sophie, braver than ever, walked beside him. The two children guided the foal through the obstacle course, pausing to celebrate every small victory. Each step Phoenix took was mirrored by the children, their faces lit with confidence. Eleanor watched, arms folded, her heart overflowing. She knew the future would still hold storms. Oakwood would still face setbacks, heartbreaks, and the struggles that came with caring for the fragile and the forgotten. But she also knew, without doubt, that the farm would endure, so long as it kept opening its gates and its heart to those who needed it. Later, as twilight settled over the fields, Eleanor walked to the paddock one last time. Phoenix, tired but content, leaned into her shoulder. Willow grazed nearby, serene. The night air was soft and cool. Above them, the barn's new sign glowed gently in the dusk. Phoenix Project, healing hearts, one hoofbeat at a time. She knelt by Phoenix, pressing her cheek to his warm neck. "Thank you," she whispered. "You saved me. You saved all of us. I hope you always remember how loved you are." A hush fell as the last of the visitors departed. Eleanor stood at the gate, watching the children's handprints fade into the deepening shadows, a patchwork of colors left behind as a promise. In that stillness, her thoughts turned to Chloe Turner. She wondered where the girl was now, whether she'd found her own peace or was still chasing the next ribbon, the next like, the next fleeting spark of validation. Eleanor hoped quietly that Chloe might one day learn what Oakwood and Phoenix had taught everyone else, that real worth lies not in what we win, but in what we give, and in the courage to start again, no matter how many times we fall. She walked back to the barn as the first stars appeared overhead. The lights inside glowed warm and golden, illuminating the faces of those she loved. Her chosen family, bound not by blood, but by struggle and hope. And as the cool breeze danced across the paddocks, Eleanor felt only gratitude. Sometimes, the greatest champions are not the ones who cross the finish line first, but the ones who keep rising, no matter how many times they are knocked down. Sometimes, the scars we carry are the very things that give us strength, and the wounds we heal in others are what truly make us whole. So if you've listened to the story of Phoenix, of Oakwood, of the children and families who found healing here, remember, you too can rise from whatever ashes you face. You too can be someone's hope. And if this story moved you, please share it. Like the video, subscribe for more, And tell us in the comments how you found your own phoenix moment, the time when you rose again. The sun dipped below the hills, leaving Oakwood in peaceful twilight. Phoenix nuzzled close to Willow, and Eleanor, her heart full, looked to the horizon, ready for whatever tomorrow would bring, knowing she would face it, not alone, but together with all those who believed in second chances.